Good evening. My name is Major Clausen. This is my operational approach for ACSC Week 2 in our joint class. And so starting with the end state, really working from the target backwards, I classified it as a safe AOR, an empowered GCC, and de-escalation of aggression in the Strait of Hormuz. So that's where we start talking about that first, so we can work our conditions and COGS, and then finally our LOEs off of what the end state is. For the conditions, trying to achieve 5 separate conditions that will support that end state. First is the Iranian military supporting the SO closure are defeated, and the second one there is Iranian military defending disputed islands are defeated and islands are subject to international arbitration. Third, VEOs are sufficiently degraded and unable to interfere with U.S. or allied efforts. Fourth, the Cooperation Council for Arab States of the Gulf are unified against Iran. And finally, Saudi Arabia has ceased its arms race against Iran, and specifically, we're referencing the nuclear aspect of it, but in general, ceasing the arms race. So it's really a twofold condition there. For the COGS associated, the IRGC is the COG there for the first 2 conditions, and then the regime inner circle for the 3rd condition, and then KSA population for the 4th, and KSA government, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia government, for the 5th one. I focused on KSA population since they are the biggest, what would you call it, the biggest factor really for supporting any or being against Western, any kind of pro-Western philosophy, and they're the biggest player in the GCC, so really targeting that population for diplomatic actions and so forth. Okay, so getting on to the LOEs. LOE 1 classified this as established local air and maritime superiority control measures in the egg. For the second one, counter VEO, so violent extreme organizations, and then extremist organizations, sorry. And then LOE 3, build the alliance, and then LOE 4 will be diplomatic persuasion. So just starting with the top one, classified under a destroy LOE, and really based on the spins and the guidance in the class for the notional scenario, we would withhold any overt military action against Iran unless they had taken action against us first. So really our presence right off the bat, right? So going out there and being present, we're already there. So if things start to heat up, that's at decision point 1, listed as DP1. So if DP1 happens and Iran takes hostile action against coalition forces, the different things that we could do there is establish air superiority. Second, degrade enemy C2, establish maritime superiority, then land and control operations on the contested islands themselves. Once we have those under control, now we're going to execute DCA, defense counter air for disputed islands and partner nations. And then finally, and that DP2 could happen earlier, right? It could be right next to DP1, or it could be at the same time, right? But DP2 is intel assesses Iran is mobilizing for nuclear strike. And apologies, that should be DP2 there for that. And what we would do if they did that and we had that assessment, then we would gain presidential gain presidential approval to neutralize the nuclear facilities there. But as it stands in this scenario, that would obviously not be our first course of action unless they were working towards actually doing some sort of nuclear strike and mobilizing that. Okay, some of these different things that we could do would fall across different LOEs. That's indicated by the lines moving down, as you can see there. So the established air superiority would also move along the destroy, degrade towards the counter VEO operations, as well as work to influence Saudi Arabia to cease their arms race, right? So that's working down to the different LOEs, covering several of them. Maritime superiority, same. It's covering multiple LOEs there for counter VEO operations, as well as the diplomatic persuasion line. And then the fourth item that I forgot to talk about earlier, but it's actually from the support LOE, also crosses into the destroy, which is diplomatic sanctions against Iran, increased sanctions, right? Try to choke off some of their resources there, and also an increased trade agreements with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, right? So it's twofold on that one as well. The land control operations also moves down several LOEs, working towards that counter VEO, as well as the diplomatic persuasion. DCA works across all three of them. It does help build an alliance. We can use partner nations as well to work DCA under a coalition, and show that, you know, we are helping defend the neighboring states, and getting showing the trust is there, and trying to gather all the GCC members to work together to defeat Iran in this case. All right, for LOE 2, talked to some of the other ones. I've talked to all the other ones that cross into LOE 2 from the destroy LOE. Other stuff specific for LOE 2 for counter VEO is to neutralize VEO operations facilities, degrade weapons proliferation from VEOs to VEOs from Iran, destroy the supply of funding to VEOs from Iran, delegitimize Hezbollah and Hamas, so targeting that vulnerability there, and then civil security operations. For number 3, for building the alliance, specifically the Marine and Air Force partner nation integration. So working in conjunction. What I mean partner nation integration is we are combining force really, and that can be exercises. It gets a little more touchy when you're actually doing offensive operations, but we can definitely work together to sharpen the steel there between nations for that, and it does work pretty well in my experience, working with different partner nations to build that alliance. Great. Another one I didn't talk about yet, there is pro-Western diplomatic messaging towards GCC, so working that from a diplomatic angle, and then once again targeting the KSA population for that COG. Finally, for the support LOE, number 4, diplomatic persuasion, specific for that, diplomatic sanctions against Iran. We talked about that already, and increased trade agreements, which also blends across several LOEs there as well. And then finally, international memorandums of understanding. We can work diplomacy there to issue that favorable towards that persuasion of ceasing their arms race, whatever flavor those MOUs would be, worked from the State Department. So that is the big picture overview for my take on the operational approach for this assignment. Thank you.